Welcome to the Costa Property Podcast, the podcast that turns your dreams of owning a piece of paradise on the Costa del Sol into reality. I'm Warner Laurie, and I'm joined by my co-host and wife, Sandra Laurie.
Join us as we embark on navigating the ins and outs of real estate and relocation to this beautiful region.
We're not just about market trends, we're about sharing real-life experiences, because we know the struggle firsthand and I've helped many people navigate this challenge also.
If you're dreaming of your perfect Costa del Sol home and want to get real, no-frills, expert advice, then you're absolutely in the right place. Join us each week as we share honest insights and information that will guide your journey. Whether you are already living in Spain or planning your move, understanding the healthcare system of Spain is vital. We have been having a lot of conversations recently with potential homeowners who want to relocate but are worried about the healthcare system in a new country. And this is something we can relate to. When we first relocated to Spain with our young family, this was also a concern for us. How do you register as a foreign resident? What are your options between public and private care? And the big question that causes a lot of anxiety: what if I don't speak Spanish? To help us unpack all of this, we are joined by the wonderful Irina from Malaga Expat Consulting. As an expat herself, Irina understands firsthand the challenges of moving your family and life to a new country. Today, we'll cover everything you need to know about navigating healthcare in Spain, so you will leave this episode today with actionable steps you can take to feel confident in navigating the Spanish healthcare system. So before we dive into it, let's look at the Spanish word of the day. Now, the Spanish word of the day today is kind of an obvious one. It's hospital, which is basically hospital. It's similar to what it sounds like in English, right? Hospital, or hospital in Spanish. When you say the word hospital in Spanish, it actually spells the same as English. But in Spanish, H is silent, so it turns it into hospital. Let's dive into today's episode. So Irina, how are you this morning?
I'm great. I'm very, very good this morning. Well, I cannot complain. Life is great here on Costa del Sol and in Malaga. How about you?
Good. I'm really good. I don't know about you, but I love this time of year. The weather starts to cool down.
That's my favorite as well. It's the summer is over. There's not so much heat anymore. There's not so many people anymore. And the weather is still brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
So I know, Irina, you have been our guest in season 1. And now we're season 2. So I'm delighted to have you back. But for our listeners who don't know you already, if you don't mind just introducing yourself and talking a little bit about what brought you to Spain and your own journey, if that's okay.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, firstly, congratulations on your amazing podcast. I think you're doing a fantastic job. Myself, I'm Irina. I run Malaga Expat Consulting, which is a relocation advisory, relocation consultancy. I myself live in Spain now since 15 years. Initially, we lived in Tenerife. That's where we moved from Switzerland with my husband. And then 7 years ago, we moved here to the mainland already with an extended family, with our daughter. And yeah, since then we're here and absolutely loving it. That has become our home. So here in Malaga, we have really found our second home. As I wanted to actually talk about something, as we today are going to speak about health insurance and health cover, a very, very important topic. And I wanted to tell a story related when we came to Spain. It was a bit funny. We came from Switzerland. I don't know how much you know about Switzerland. Switzerland is outside of EU, but it is still within the EEA. So yeah, it is equal to EU in many aspects. But when it comes to health cover, Switzerland doesn't have any public system. Not at all. So the only system is a private system. There are different levels of the health cover of private system. You can have the basic one, which is obligatory for everyone. And then you have obviously much more advanced or higher levels of coverage. But in Switzerland, you cannot, well, if you come to live in Switzerland, that's the very first thing you need to arrange, your health insurance. So when we came to Spain, my husband is Swiss, so with this attitude that this is the most important thing, was on the top of our list to do when we just arrived. So it was even before getting all the documentation arranged or what I normally help people with. It was health insurance. So we looked, as we didn't speak a word of Spanish either, and we looked for any health insurance which could attend us in English. We found the first office, which was Sanita's office. And we came in, the lady there spoke perfect English. And in like 10 minutes, we came out with the private health insurance. What came as a shock to us, especially coming from Switzerland, is how cheap it was in Spain to get a private health insurance. That's, I think, thing with many people coming to Spain from their home countries are used to that private health insurance is something very, very expensive. And this is really not the case in Spain. You can get a very good health cover for a very reasonable fee, for a very reasonable price. We were very happy, I must say. Sanitas has been serving us now for like 15 years. We initially, the first 5 years, we didn't even use public service, although we were part of it as we both worked, but we didn't use it as it was difficult with the language, it was difficult with getting appointments. So we tried once, it was all very complicated and we didn't use it. So the only health insurance we used was private and we were very happy. Then when we moved to the mainland Spain, had our daughter with a small child, and we also spoke by then Spanish already, so it was much easier to use as well public, especially with all the pediatrician checks and so on. And that's how we got into both systems. And now we are using both. We're very happy, and I think those can complement very, very well each other, the public system and the private system.
Agree. I'm the same as you. We use both. We use a combination. And it was for the exact same reason as you've described when we first moved here, from a comfort perspective. Usually, and we'll dive into this as we talk a little bit later on, the private insurances, you can expect often a higher standard of English, and it's expected that they will speak English. And that just, I think, gives my son was moving with chronic asthma. He has a very severe asthma condition. So at that point, I felt as mum, I needed private to be able to support him to navigate that. And what I loved, as you correctly said, it's cheap. So cheap coming from, I'm comparing it to Ireland, where private health insurance is really expensive. And also you could go and expect appointments on the same day. The kids had their own private waiting room. You were like expedited really fast through the system. And when you're in a new country and you don't speak the language and you have a sick child, that is all you want.
It's the worst. It's the worst. Not only child, if anything happens to you, your family, or anybody close to you at this particular moment, and you cannot communicate about it, I think that's the worst which you need to go through. So, and the private cover in this sense can help a lot. I mean, obviously it is still a private health insurance in Spain, so the majority will be spoken in Spanish. But the availability of English-speaking doctors is not comparable to the public.
And I agree with you that when you then become more comfortable navigating Spanish, the public and private systems complement each other very, very well. And I like that dynamic. But we get asked about healthcare, I would say probably on a daily basis, from people that are planning to maybe retire to Spain or buying their property to retire to. For obvious reasons, it's something that's really front to mind. And they're always curious about how, as an expat, do they register for healthcare in Spain? Mm-hmm. And, what do they need to think about? This is really a field where you have a lot of experience and expertise. So I'd love to pick your brain on that question. If somebody was to ask you that, what would you direct them to do?
Of course. Well, firstly, it's important to mention that public healthcare in Spain is not automatically available to everyone. Even if you're coming from another EU country, and even if you have your EU card, the EU card serves just for the beginning, for the temporary stay in the beginning, and it covers you for, let's say, emergency situation. You cannot come on your European health card and start doing all your, annual checks and going to the doctor just to check something. So that is not covered. So it is really like a travel insurance, okay, equal to that. Otherwise, unless you are working in Spain as employed or self-employed, or one of your family members, your spouse, for example, works in Spain, or you have entitlements through another routes like pension coming from another EU country or from the UK, with whom Spain still has the agreement in place. Unless you have entitlement to that, you don't have automatic access to the public system. So the only way at the beginning is going private system. And then after you have been living at least 1 year as legal resident, you will have a possibility to access public systems through a separate called Convenio Especial, which is a separate system allowing all foreign residents, legal residents in Spain, to access the public system against the fee. So that's first point, important to mention, that it's not automatically available to everyone. If it is available to you through one of the situations as we described, that you are working or your family member works, or you come through pension, or you come through your foreign employer, which is also the case, then the documentation which would be required, or let's say the process, is that you first would have to be registered in the Spanish Social Security. You would have to be registered with the address, your municipal padrón, which is your address registration. And then with these documents, you will need to go to your local health center, which is called Centro de Salud, and they register with your local GP. Okay, and the system that works in a way that every time you need to see a doctor, you need to get an appointment with your local GP, and then the GP will decide if you need to see a specialist, so they will send you further. You will receive an appointment with a specialist at a later stage. What is important to mention as well is that all these admin procedures in the beginning can really take time. So even if you have access to the public system, until you're fully in the system and until you can fully enjoy the services of the public system to its full, not just the emergencies. For emergencies, of course, you're covered from the beginning, but to enjoy it to the full can pass several months, especially if you come with a family. All your dependents, which are children or spouse who is not working, all of them first need to become legal residents of Spain, then get registered as your dependents in the Social Security, and only then they can have access to the public system. So these can really sometimes take several months until you are there. During all this time, if you need to use the services of the public system, this will be available to you in case of emergency, but not for the regular routine checkups.
That information that you've just shared there, that's gold. There's so much value in everything you've just said. And just a couple of things I've picked up on. So the first thing is that, as you correctly said, it's important based on your situation, what type of access to healthcare you have. So let's say you're a family like you and I, and we relocated with our kids to Spain, and our intention was to work, and we're employed. And as you say there, from the start, you are covered by emergency services only, not the full suite of healthcare, because that is something I see people get tripped up on, and then they end up maybe with a costly invoice or bill from the hospital because they haven't actually paid enough stamps or paid enough contributions into the social security system yet to cover all of their healthcare. So the fact that you've mentioned that again is maybe from the beginning, there's a reason to often think about private insurance until you're fully covered for you and your dependents, right?
Absolutely. That's my recommendation always, to give you peace of mind, especially if you're moving with the family, with small children, or in fact, anything can happen with, like I had recently, one of my clients had an accident. They moved here and they are fully insured. So while one of them is working, they have access to the public system. However, the procedures were still, the admin was still in the process of getting finalized. And during this time, husband had an accident, so he broke his leg, and he was, of course, brought with an ambulance through the emergency. He was brought to the hospital. And on the second day, the admin department of the hospital contacted the wife and said, present us that you have access to the public system, or here it is, there is an invoice for you. Yeah. We could solve the situation because, yes, they had access, although the documentation was still in process. But in such situation, when you have to deal with the stress, let's say, emergency for your family member in a foreign country where nobody understands you, and at the same time, you have to deal with the admin department to prove that you don't need to pay. And you're saying, this can be very, very, very stressful on you and on the whole family. So to avoid it is the best route is to have private healthcare from the beginning for everyone, because then there are no questions asked. You're covered from the beginning. You have the full access. You will have full assistance as well in terms of language. And then once you're in and settled and have a better understanding of the system and better knowledge of Spanish and so on, you can decide if it's worth for you to keep the private or not.
I have a question then in terms of people that are retiring to Spain, and I want to pick your knowledge of this because this is an area that I'm not so sure about myself when it comes to healthcare. So I guess a lot of our clients, they're either coming from Europe where they're retired or they're non-EU. So they're British or they're maybe American. But you mentioned something a moment ago about if a British person is retiring into Spain, that they can expect some sort of health cover. Did I interpret that correctly?
That's right, yeah. If they are of retirement age, official retirement age, as UK has been part of EU for a very long time, there is still in place a social security agreement between EU and particularly we are talking about Spain and UK. So the entitlement to the public health care which the person brings from the UK will be valid here in Spain. So the documentation what people would need to obtain is the form called S1 from the HMRC in the UK. And then this S1 form will have to be registered in Spanish Social Security, and then this person will have access to the public health care. However, again, there we need to know that the process of registering S1 can sometimes take 9 months. Like things just can take time in Spain. And before you can register S1 with Spanish Social Security, you need to be legal resident of Spain. So again, in the majority of the cases, like 99% of the cases, to obtain your initial visa, your residency visa to come to Spain, you most likely will require to purchase a private health insurance, and this is one of the requirements of the visa. And during the first year that you are living in Spain, you can go through the process of registering your S1 and then have access to the public health care.
Okay, amazing. So even though long term, you will still be able to go through your S1 process, the advice is always still at the beginning, your private health insurance, because it's likely that you're going to need that as part of your visa application anyway.
Yes, absolutely.
And I would assume then, if you were coming from America, it kind of needs to be the same. You're going to have to go through your visa application and your health insurance is required then as part of that as well.
Absolutely. If you come from outside of the EU, except of UK, so any other country outside of EU, the only way for you is through the private healthcare. You need to obtain initially a private healthcare for your visa application. And then once you're here legal resident, once you've been here legal resident for at least a year, you can start the application to the public healthcare through Convenio Especial, which is a special program given by the public system, where you can enter the system against a fee and therefore benefit from all the advantages which public system can give you. In this sense, I think it's very important to mention the huge advantages of having access to the public system. Like, for example, public system will never have any exclusions which is not the case with the private system. Private system will never insure you for any pre-existing condition. You have some health conditions, health issues, they will always be excluded. And in some occasions, you may even have difficulty to be insured, depending on the condition. This is not the case with the public system. Public system cannot do any exclusion, so they have to insure everything. So that's the biggest benefit of having access to the public system.
And just on that point then, that's why I would assume that if you are going through then a visa process, a visa application process, one of your first to do criteria would be your health insurance, because you'd need to be assured that you're going to be included, right?
Absolutely. That is so important. You need to check if you will be in the position to get the private health insurance. For example, if you have really serious diseases like cancer, in the last 5 years, there is no health insurance, no private health insurance in Spain, which will be in the position to insure you.
Yeah, so that's critical then for, you understanding your next steps, because if you're not going to be covered, your plan to move to Spain may be impacted as a result of that. What you've covered there around the first step always being get your health insurance. And I totally agree with you on that from a peace of mind perspective. Irrelevant of what stage of your life you're at, whether you're a family relocating,
Absolutely.
whether you're someone planning to retire to Spain, whether you're somebody who's doing a study visa in Spain, irregardless of your circumstance, always health insurance
Absolutely.
to begin with from a peace of mind. What happens later on then? So you are paying your social security contribution into the Spanish system regularly. You're confident now that Spain's going to be a permanent home for you. You're maybe 18 months, 2 years down the line in your journey, and you're evaluating whether private health insurance is the correct long-term decision for you. If you're at that stage, what should you start to consider or weigh up? Are there differences in private that are benefits that you won't be able to maintain anymore if you give that up? Are there things there people should consider?
Oh, absolutely. There are huge differences between the public and the private system. Public system, as good as it is, Spain has a really good, compared to many other countries. I think it is a fantastic level. However, it has its handicaps as well. Some of those are very long waiting times for seeing a specialist. So if you don't have any emergency, you just want to, you have a pain which disturbs you a little bit, but you can, according to the health system, you can manage it. If this is the case, waiting time to see a specialist can be several months, especially with such highly demanded specialists, like, for example, traumatologist, dermatologist. Downside are very long waiting times for operations. Again, not urgent operations like surgical procedures, but you can be on the waiting list for several years until you come to the point of being operated. So that's the biggest handicaps. You also cannot choose your doctor. If, as we said before, you need to go to your GP and then they will send you further to the specialist. But again, there you cannot choose the specialist you will be seeing. And if you need to see the specialist several times, every time you will see a different specialist. This is 100% guaranteed. So that's another thing. And of course, as we discussed before, the language, when you go and speak to your health professional, to the doctor, you want to feel comfortable. That's very, very important. And even if you have a certain level, many people still find it really difficult to conduct it in Spanish. So with all of that in mind, private system, of course, can offer you a solution for a much faster waiting time, freedom in choosing your specialist. Lots of health insurances now, for example, Sanitas, which I represent as well, they offer fantastic digital covers. So you can have video consultations with the whole range of specialists without leaving your home. You can have digital access to different health programs. You can have digital access even can even have digital physiotherapy where they will direct you how you can help. So a fantastic package, which is not available with the public system. When you're young and when you don't have any health issues, you may not see the benefits of that, which you get from the private system. However, what you need to keep in mind is once you're out of the system, if you stop your private health insurance, then you can at any time get back into it. But if during that time you have had any health conditions which has been identified, then this health condition will be excluded from your private cover in the future, even if you're going back. So if you are able to maintain both covers, your private health cover, my advice is to stick with it and to keep it till your old age, when you especially will require more health assistance and medical assistance. Private health cover is very often age limited, so once you're of a certain age, it will be more and more difficult to get a cover. But if you are with the company, once you're in, you are in. You are not going to be asked to leave the system, even if you start getting more and more, let's say, health issues and health problems.
Yeah. No, I agree with everything that you've said there. And I just want to maybe share my own experience coming from Ireland, where if we follow the media, the health service in Ireland gets heavily criticised. There's heavy feelings locally about maybe the lack of investment into the health service and people's frustrations around that. So when I moved to Spain and even just saw the standard of care in the public system, I was absolutely blown away. We made a decision to have private health insurance because of our lack of language skills at the beginning. But you mentioned there that even if you acquire a great level of Spanish, which you will do, for me, I am still more comfortable to talk about my health concerns in English. And that has been one of the reasons I've maintained my private health cover. Not because, because being in the system, we could have given that up. But it felt like a comfort blanket for me. And this could be just maybe my own perception. Because you're paying for the service, you don't feel guilty speaking in English because they're international services, international hospitals. So you feel like, well, I'm paying for this service, so it's my prerogative to come in here and speak English if I want to, because that's what I'm comfortable doing. I don't always feel the same when I go to the local GP in Spanish. No. I feel when I go to the Centro de Salud, I feel I have to speak Spanish and I'm obliged to do that. And I'm not always as comfortable in that transaction. So maybe just for listeners out there that are considering that, I'll park my health insurance because I'm in the system and I can afford to move away from that. I think don't underestimate the level of comfort it gives you being able to communicate in a language that you're maybe more comfortable to articulate yourself in.
100%.
Amazing. When it comes then to like an emergency service in Spain, so somebody's over on a longer term vacation or a vacation in general, how reliable is Spain's service in terms of emergencies, and what should people do?
Emergency service, it works really, really well. I mean, thank God I never had, so I cannot talk from own experience, but from the experiences of people I know, it works really well. If something has happened and if you need to call the ambulance, you need to call 112. Again, obviously, language could be an issue. You can be asked to be spoken in English, but then you need to be prepared that you might be put on a waiting call. And this, again, depending on what the emergency is, could be very, very stressful. But all in all, you will get your ambulance very quickly. You will be delivered to hospital and you will be attended. No matter what, nobody is going to come and ask you first for the, documentation proving that you have access to the emergency services. No, you will be straight away attended. If you don't need an ambulance, then you can just go directly to the emergency room, called urgencia in Spanish. And again, there you might need to sit in a queue and wait, but also you will be attended. So that's absolutely no question about that.
Amazing, amazing. And again, to reinforce that, any experience that I've had where anybody's had to engage in emergency services over here because they've been here on the short term, I totally agree with you. Everybody's treated and taken care of. And the emergency services are very good, actually. And the emergency rooms are very well equipped. So Yeah, I can't really fault any experiences that I've had with health service in general over here in Spain. I feel that it's been very good. We've been very lucky. And I think you've just given us so much to think about today, Irina, in terms of people need to be thinking about the topic of health insurance up there, one of their first actions on their to-do list when they are planning for their journey.
Absolutely. Just to sum up also, let's say 3 most important takeaways is that public system is not automatically available to everyone, even if you're moving from the EU country. I think this is the perception that many expect to have, but it is important to know that you need to check if it will be available to you or not. And even if yes, it may take time until you're fully in the system. So it may take time, several months, until you and your family have full access. I say to secure that, to make sure that, to give you peace of mind, to make sure that you and your family have full access, the best advice is to take private from the beginning, and then at a later stage, you can decide if you need it or not. My recommendation is to keep both private and public, and I think important here also to mention that with a private system you can have different levels of access. You don't necessarily need a comprehensive cover which you would require in the beginning when you don't yet have access to the public system. At a later stage you can just reduce your cover to secure that you have access to specialists, to avoid the waiting list, to have assistance in your language and so on. But it doesn't have to be as full and comprehensive as initially. And as we already mentioned before, not to forget, private system doesn't have to be expensive. So this is also an idea many have, that it will, by the word of private, it will have to be expensive, but it doesn't have to be. So you just need to check of different level of commerce and accesses available to you. And the best you can do is to maintain it during the whole time.
Amazing. Great takeaways. I really would love to thank you for your insights today. I've actually learned loads from this episode, and you've reminded me about things that you forget about. So thank you for all your knowledge. I know this is going to be an incredibly valuable episode. And as I mentioned when we signed on at the beginning, it's a topic that we get asked all of the time. Irina, you run an incredible relocation support consultancy service for your clients, Malaga Expat Consultants. Could you tell our listeners how to get in touch with you?
Yeah, my website is www.malagaexpat.com. And I can also be contacted through my Instagram, which is malaga.expat, or my Facebook page, which is Malaga Expat. Same name everywhere. If you just put Malaga Expat, you will be able to find all the ways to contact me.
Amazing. Definitely, I recommend to follow you on Instagram. You are always posting helpful tips. You know, I think I loved what you did last week around things you need to think about your rental contract. So it's a real informative hub of information on your Instagram page. So definitely give Irina a follow. We will pop all of her information and details into the show notes of this episode anyway, in case that you'd like to reach out and get in touch. Irina, thank you so much for today.
Thank you, Sandra, very much for inviting me.
Thank you so much for listening into today's episode on the Costa Property Podcast. Another fantastic episode learning about the highs and lows of relocating to the Costa del Sol from real people who have been through the journey themselves, and of course our wonderful experts. If you have been enjoying the show so far, remember to hit subscribe to the podcast and leave a rating or review.
We absolutely love hearing your thoughts. Please send any questions that you would like us to answer on the show to warner@wlcostaproperties.net. Or you can pop us a message on our socials, which are in the show notes. Remember, you can also visit the website, www.wlcostaproperties.net.
See you on the next episode, and bye for now.
Bye-bye.